When we think about the Oregon Trail, our minds usually jump straight to covered wagons, right? That grueling journey west. But what about what happened after? The real pioneer story often isn't on the trail itself. It's in the messy, complicated, and fascinating lives people built once they got there. And tucked away in the Oregon archives is the story of one family, the Fields. And trust me, their drama is more gripping than any trail story you've ever heard.
So let's start at the end. It's 1883, and a woman named Ann Fields passes away. Her obituary paints this perfect picture of a respected pioneer matriarch. They called her Grandma Fields. She came to Oregon back in '53, built a life, and was the head of this huge family with 63 descendants. It sounds like the perfect frontier success story.
But as is so often the case, that public image, that's only a tiny piece of the puzzle. Hiding in plain sight in dusty old court records was a completely different story, a much, much more dramatic one. And the very first clue that something else is going on is this number, almost $3,200. That was the value of her estate when she died. Now, what's so wild about that is that this wasn't tied up in a farm or a bunch of cattle. Nope, almost all of it was liquid. We're talking cash, mortgages, and IOUs. So that begs the question, right? How on earth does a pioneer woman arriving on the frontier with next to nothing become the local banker? The answer, the key to her incredible independence, is found in a nasty court battle from decades earlier. It's all in her divorce papers. So let's hop in our time machine and go back to the 1850s. The Fields' home was, well, it was not a happy one. Court documents from the time paint a picture of a marriage that was in serious, long-term trouble. According to Ann's testimony, she put up with this awful marriage for one main reason: her daughters. You have to remember, in this new, small community, a scandal could absolutely destroy a young woman's reputation and her chances of finding a good husband. Ann said her own girls were, and I'm quoting the record here, mortified at the unnatural conduct of their father. And the kids were caught right in the crossfire. As their parents basically stopped functioning as a couple, the children had to pick up the slack. The unmarried daughters were terrified for their social standing. Their son Thomas and daughter Sarah ended up having to cook for their dad. And things got so tense, so transactional, that after Sarah got married, she started charging her own father to do his laundry. And Ann even told Thomas, "Don't you dare work for him unless he pays you for it." Well, all this tension finally boiled over. It erupted in a violent fight that would become a key piece of evidence in the divorce. It all started over something as simple as feeding a horse, but it went down in the court records as the stable fight. So, what happened? Well, depends on who you ask. The court records give us two completely different versions of events. Ann's side, told through her daughter Sarah, says her husband Ambrose was the aggressor from the start. But the hired hand, a guy named John Wilson, testified that Ann actually struck the first blow. It's a classic he said, she said, and a perfect reminder that historical truth can be incredibly messy. But there's one chilling detail that everyone agreed on. While Ann was down on the ground in the mud, Ambrose stood over her, waving a stick. And Wilson's testimony gives us this incredibly specific description of it. So no matter who started it, the threat of real violence was absolutely there. The stable fight was the last straw. That was it. So let's follow Ann to the courthouse and see how she didn't just escape a bad marriage, she actually engineered her own financial independence. And wow, the court's final ruling in 1856 was a massive win for her. She got alimony, she got half their land claim, but the absolute game changer, the most important part of this whole deal, is that second point. The court awarded her all promissory notes in her possession. The court legally recognized and handed over her entire money-lending business. And how do we know for sure it was her business? Because her own husband complained about it in his court filings. He basically admitted to the court that, yeah, Ann was loaning out money and charging interest on it. He pretty much made her case for her. And other people backed it up too. Her own son, Joseph, testified that, yep, he'd borrowed money from his mom, and he had to pay it back with 10% interest. This wasn't some little hobby. This was a serious business, and the court just gave her the keys to the kingdom. So let's fast forward again, back to 1883. Back to Grandma Fields and her obituary. Once you know the story of the divorce, that mysterious fortune of almost $3,200, well, it's not a mystery anymore, is it? It all started with the seed money she won in that courtroom battle. And here, this is the final, undeniable proof of her incredible journey to financial freedom. When her estate was settled, the records showed that 3 of her own daughters owed her money. I mean, think about that. She wasn't just their mother, she was their creditor. She achieved a level of financial control that was almost unheard of for a woman in the 19th century. But the family story has one more sad, strange twist. Also in the probate file is this document. It's a petition about her son, James. Turns out, he had vanished years before, last seen somewhere in Kentucky. And after searching for him for more than 7 years with no luck, his siblings had to go to court to have him declared legally dead just so they could finally settle their mother's estate. It's just a really somber footnote to this family's complicated history. Anne Field's story just completely shatters that simple, one-dimensional image of the pioneer woman, doesn't it? It shows us these incredibly complex, real stories of conflict, survival, and amazing resilience. And it just makes you wonder, how many other Grandma Fields are out there, their stories just sitting in an archive, waiting for someone to connect the dots?